Hey guys, welcome back. Today's viewer question is from MarlinNotFish, and he'd like to know a little bit more about his oil life monitor on his '07 Grand Marquis. And I thought I would take this opportunity because it applies to all Panther cars from 2006 to 2011 with the optional instrument cluster. But before we get into it, I'd like to read the results of this week's poll. And if you're taking the time to vote and leave good feedback comments, I really appreciate it because it helps me put these lame videos together. So in 22 hours, we had 134 votes, and the question was 2006 to 2011 Panther car oil life monitor uses a, and 46 people said it uses a fixed mileage strategy. 16 people said it uses a fixed time strategy, and 16 people says it uses a condition-based strategy, PCM sensor data, and 57 people said guess what Sunday's video is about. So when I first read this question, or when I first read this comment, it took me back to my very first experience with a warning lamp indicator in the instrument panel. And I remember it was a 1980 something car, and when the warning lamp illuminated, I did some research and looked it up in the service manual, and it turns out the manufacturer strategy was to illuminate that light when the vehicle odometer reached 100,000 miles. And if I remember correctly, the correct action was to replace the oxygen sensor on that car. So starting around 1980, when they started putting these maintenance lights in cars, it seemed like every manufacturer had a different operation strategy on how it would work. So I'd like to talk about the three that I'm familiar with. And the first one is I just did. It's just a fixed mileage strategy that illuminates when the odometer reaches a certain mileage. Now there's a second one that doesn't go off mileage, but it goes off time, and it just counts up a certain number of days or a certain number of months, etc. And when that time is reached, the PCM will illuminate the warning lamp. Now the third operation strategy is when manufacturers started really getting sophisticated, and you can imagine all of the different sensors we've got on the engine underneath the hood and throughout the car. And just to name a few, I think we're all aware how the crank sensor works, and that shows your revolutions per minute of the engine. But you can also program the PCM to count the total number of revolutions, and when the PCM counts off a total number of revolutions, it can also turn on a warning lamp. So essentially they're inferring an hour meter, and once the PCM reaches a certain number of operational hours, just like a piece of small engine equipment like a snow blower or a wood chipper, it can turn on the maintenance light. And some other sensors are like the temperature sensors, coolant temp, ambient temp, and they'll data log how long the engine is running at certain temperatures when it's really cold, like in cold loop conditions when the fuel is very rich, and fuel saturation can become a problem with engine oil and whatnot. And on the other side, if you're operating the engine in extremely hot weather, that can also degrade engine oil and increase the change interval. And a couple other sensors are like the brake pedal position switch, and it'll count off how many times the brake pedal is depressed. The throttle position sensor, it'll log how many times the driver commands a wide open throttle situation, etc., etc. Just think about all the different sensors, and it's really up to the manufacturer's imagination on how they can capture and write a program to form an operational strategy or an algorithm to log all this information and interpret it in order to get an estimation on when certain preventative maintenances should be carried out. So how does the oil life monitor work in our Panther cars? Well, in 2006 to 2011, we've got an oil life monitor, and it uses a fixed time strategy, and it doesn't go by mileage, it goes by time. And what that means is when you reset it to 100%, it starts a 180-day clock, and it starts counting down. So you can confirm and verify this the next time you do your oil change and you reset the oil life monitor. Write the date on your calendar, and then you can start counting off the days. When it reaches 75%, it means there's 135 days of oil life left. When you reach 50%, you'll have 90 days left. 25% is 45 days. 10%, you have 18 days left, and that's when it throws on the engine oil change soon message with that beep whenever you start the car. And when it reaches 0%, then it'll say oil change required. So basically every 6 months is when the oil life monitor will tell you that the engine oil is required. Now, can you trust these oil life monitors? Well, it depends on your application. You know, it's kind of like when should you change any of the fluids? Well, it all depends on how you're operating the vehicle and what type of climate you're operating in. So just to go over the owner's manual real quick, I pulled the owner's manual for my 04 Vic, and this is the same, or this is very similar for all Panther cars from 1992 to 2011, and it always talks about two different types of preventative maintenance schedules. The first schedule is defined as a normal schedule, and then it always lists a special operating condition. So on my 04 it says normal schedule is 5,000 miles or 6 months for an oil change, and it calls it the maximum oil change interval. And then right underneath that it says special operating conditions is 3,000 miles or 3 months or 200 hours of engine operation, whichever occurs first. See more info on page 43. And so I've pulled all of the special operating conditions, and just to go over those real quick, the owner's manual defines special operating conditions as towing a trailer or carrying a heavy load, extensive idling or low-speed driving for a long distance as in heavy commercial use, such as delivery, taxi, patrol car, livery, or CVPI, operating in dusty conditions such as unpaved roads, off-road operation, and use of E85 Flex Fuel. So, can you trust it, and how often should you be changing your oil? Well, you know, it all depends on your application. It all depends on what you're using the car for. So it might be a good idea to always check your owner's manual, and you just use that as a guide. Do your research and use your best judgment. Okay, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.